Who prefer a world of utility. Ford, America's station wagon specialist and
Have you ever felt a wave of nostalgia at the sight of a classic car, taking you back to family road trips in simpler times? If so, you're not alone. For many, especially those of us over 55, a glimpse of a station wagon can bring back vivid memories from the 1960s through the 90s. That familiar shape, the extra row of seats in the back, and maybe even a hint of wood paneling along the sides, it all recalls family vacations, Sunday drives, and shuttling half the neighborhood's children to school. Welcome to this special look at the story of the station wagon, that reliable family vehicle which for decades was central to suburban life. Today, we'll take a relaxed walk through time to see how this understated car became so important to households everywhere, how it changed over the years, and why it still holds a cherished place in our hearts. Before getting into the details, let's pause for a moment of reminiscence. Imagine being a teenager in the late 1960s or early 70s, climbing into the family's new station wagon, maybe a Chevy, maybe a Ford, for a trip that felt like the best adventure of your life. You might recall the smell of the upholstery, the static on the radio playing favorite tunes, and the laughter of family or friends as everyone scrambled for a window seat. For many, those wagon days were about togetherness. We didn't just travel from point A to point B. We shared stories, played games with passing road signs, and teased siblings in the back seat. The car itself became an extension of home, only with four wheels and a tailgate. Interestingly, station wagons came from a humble origin, the depot hack. In the late 1800s, horse-drawn versions carried people and luggage from train stations to country estates or hotels. When cars replaced horse-drawn carriages, manufacturers simply adapted the practical design. Early models were mostly commercial, owned by hotels or resorts to ferry guests to and from stations. However, as the new century arrived, families recognized these vehicles' potential. By the 1920s, the automotive world was progressing quickly, and it didn't take long for a few forward-thinking companies to realize that what worked in a commercial setting could also work for regular households. Instead of outsourcing the rear bodywork to coach builders, several major automakers began producing all-steel station wagons themselves, making them sturdier and more dependable. If you grew up in the 50s or 60s, you may remember the so-called woody wagons. Some had genuine wood side panels, pricey, high maintenance, but undeniably charming. Over time, this gave way to faux wood stickers or wood grain decals. Whether real or not, the wooden look lent a welcoming feel, hinting at a tradition of craftsmanship and cars with more individual character. The downside was that real wood needed constant upkeep. As the industry modernized, most automakers switched to steel bodies. This happened at just the right time. The post-war baby boom meant larger families, and they needed seating for multiple children, plus room for groceries, pets, and everything else a big household might carry. By the 1950s and early 60s, station wagons were beloved by American families. Most people knew at least one household with a big, roomy wagon, complete with bench seats and wide windows, perfect for watching the world go by. Yes, they used plenty of gasoline, but fuel was cheap and the roads were inviting back then. Manufacturers capitalized on the public's enthusiasm by rolling out bigger wagons each year, often featuring rear-facing seats, versatile tailgates, and even large glass roofs. At a time when cross-country family trips still felt fresh and thrilling, these cars were ideal companions, capable of towing small boats or hauling camping gear without much trouble. While the station wagon was firmly ingrained in American culture, European makers had their own versions. Known as estates in some places and breaks in France, they provided a practical option for those who needed cargo space but didn't want a separate truck or van. Some European luxury brands even toyed with the idea of the shooting brake, a sportier wagon that many simply adored for its sleek style. By the early 1970s, American station wagons hit their pinnacle. Often nicknamed boats on wheels, many were nearly 20 feet long, brimming with comfort features that made them perfect for big families. If you were loading up a youth sports team or taking everyone on a much-anticipated getaway, a wagon felt like the smartest choice. That glory didn't last. The oil crisis of 1973 changed everything. Gasoline prices soared, emissions standards tightened, and large V8 engines shifted from symbols of freedom to burdensome gas guzzlers. Automakers scrambled to reduce size and meet new regulations. Where station wagons once reigned supreme, they now seemed inefficient. Families still needed big vehicles, but efficiency mattered more than ever. Soon, cargo vans, SUVs, and the newly invented minivan arrived, all vying to replace the wagon as the ultimate family hauler. Those of us over 55 might still be amazed by how quickly minivans replaced wagons in American driveways. By the mid-'80s, streets were full of these taller, box-shaped vehicles with more interior room and a fresh style. Parents who remembered childhood travels in a wagon could now choose sliding doors, higher seating, and flashy marketing images that made the classic wagon seem, well, old-fashioned. Meanwhile, SUVs, essentially wagons in a tougher shell, appealed to anyone who wanted a rugged look and the option to drive off-road, even if they rarely did. Minivans and SUVs together made old-school wagons feel out of touch in a faster-moving era. Movies and pop culture added to this shift. National Lampoon's Vacation, for instance, turned the family wagon into a comedic icon, reinforcing its slightly clumsy image for modern audiences. Jump ahead to the present, and station wagons are few and far between in the United States. Only a handful of manufacturers still offer them, and they often rebrand them as crossovers or sportbacks to dodge the wagon label. In Europe, however, wagons remain more common, with brands like Volvo, Audi, Mercedes, and BMW selling sleek estates that balance style with practicality. For older drivers, this can trigger mixed feelings. It's true that modern technology has produced safer, more fuel-efficient, and more comfortable cars than ever. Yet there's still a certain warmth in remembering when the whole family piled into that long, sprawling wagon for a road trip, the back seats echoing with laughter. Part of the wagon's enduring charm is how it symbolized more than just a way to get around. It was a place for conversation, for bonding across generations, for creating lasting memories. Kids played spotting games, discovered new scenery, and felt the thrill of reaching distant spots. Grandparents shared family traditions, knitting connections that spanned decades. In many ways, the station wagon was the rolling backdrop for iconic family adventures. It offered space not just for luggage, but also for hopes, laughs, and companionship, things that make up our fondest reflections of the past. Although station wagons have largely faded from modern roads, their influence remains. If you ever see one at a vintage show or parked in your neighborhood, you might feel a twinge of nostalgia for those times when you too stared out the window, looking forward to the next little roadside diner or scenic pit stop. Cars may come and go, but the memories we made in them linger. For those who spent their formative years riding in these spacious, simple family wagons, the station wagon isn't merely a mode of transportation, it's a beloved chapter in our life stories. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.